Good evening, everyone. Let me start with a simple question. Have you ever noticed how two people can face the same situation, same tools, same opportunity, and one keeps moving forward while the other stays stuck? It's tempting to blame talent, luck, or circumstances, but if you look closely, the real difference usually lives much deeper. It lives in how they think, not what they know, not what they want, but the philosophy they operate on quietly every day. Most people never question that philosophy. They inherit it, absorb it, repeat it, and then wonder why life keeps giving them the same disappointing results. Tonight, we're not here to chase motivation. We're here to do something far more valuable. We're here to reprogram a losing philosophy. A losing philosophy rarely announces itself. It doesn't say, "I am wrong." It disguises itself as comfort, habit, or common sense. It whispers ideas like, "This is just how I am," or "It shouldn't be this hard," or "I'll change when I feel ready." These ideas feel harmless, but over time they quietly steer decisions in the wrong direction. And since life is largely the sum of small decisions repeated, the destination becomes predictable. Losing philosophies don't destroy lives overnight. They drain them slowly. The first step in reprogramming is brutal honesty. You have to stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What way of thinking led me here?" That question alone separates people who grow from people who repeat. Reality doesn't care about intentions. It only responds to behavior. And behavior is always downstream from belief. If your philosophy says effort should always feel exciting, you'll quit when it gets boring. If it says discomfort means something is wrong, you'll avoid the very actions that create progress. Reprogramming doesn't begin by adding fancy ideas. It begins by removing foolish ones. Stop believing that motivation comes before action. Stop believing that fairness is guaranteed. Stop believing that results should be immediate. These beliefs sound comforting, but they are expensive. Replace them with quieter, sturdier principles. Action creates motivation. Life rewards patience, not entitlement. Results lag behind effort, sometimes for a long time. The beauty of rational thinking is that it compounds. A slightly better decision made consistently beats occasional brilliance. You don't need to overhaul your life in a week. You need to adjust your thinking by a few degrees and stay there. Read a little instead of scrolling. Pause before reacting. Choose long-term benefit over short-term relief. These choices look insignificant today. They are not insignificant over a decade. Finally, understand this: the world doesn't reward intensity, passion, or confidence nearly as much as it rewards reliability, showing up, thinking clearly, avoiding obvious stupidity, doing what works even when no one is watching. When you reprogram your philosophy to favor reason over impulse, discipline over drama, and consistency over excitement, life becomes less chaotic and far more rewarding. Ladies and gentlemen, a losing philosophy is dangerous precisely because it does not feel like failure at the beginning. It feels familiar, reasonable, even safe. Most people do not wake up one day and decide to think in ways that harm their future. They slowly absorb beliefs from their environment, their upbringing, their peer group, and their past experiences. Over time, these beliefs settle into the background of the mind, quietly shaping decisions without ever being questioned. Because they feel normal, they escape scrutiny. And because they escape scrutiny, they remain in control far longer than they should. What makes a losing philosophy especially deceptive is that it often works in the short term. Avoiding discomfort feels good today. Delaying difficult decisions reduces stress in the moment. Lowering expectations protects the ego from disappointment. None of these choices look like mistakes when they are made. In fact, they often look like wisdom. The problem is that short-term relief is purchased with long-term cost, and that cost is rarely visible until it compounds into something impossible to ignore. Results are the first honest mirror. Life does not argue, negotiate, or explain. It simply delivers outcomes. When years pass and progress remains shallow, when effort does not translate into improvement, when the same problems appear in different forms, the philosophy behind those choices is being exposed. At that stage, many people still resist the truth. They blame circumstances, people, systems, or luck. This resistance is understandable because accepting that your own thinking is flawed is uncomfortable. but refusing to accept it guarantees repetition. A losing philosophy often hides behind popular phrases that sound reasonable but carry hidden poison. This is just who I am. I work better under pressure. I'll start when I feel ready. These statements feel like self-knowledge, but they are usually excuses disguised as insight. They protect habits that feel good rather than habits that work. Over time, these small rationalizations become a worldview, and that worldview quietly limits what a person believes is possible for them. The tragedy is not that people fail once or twice. Failure is part of learning. The tragedy is when failure becomes predictable, when patterns repeat with different faces, when someone keeps arriving at the same disappointing outcomes and still believes the philosophy guiding them is sound. At that point, effort increases, but results do not. Frustration grows. Confidence erodes. And yet the root cause remains untouched because it still feels normal. Change begins the moment normal is questioned. The moment someone pauses and asks not what went wrong this time, but what way of thinking keeps producing this result. That question is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful. It shifts attention from surface-level tactics to foundational beliefs. Once those beliefs are visible, they can be evaluated, adjusted, or discarded. A losing philosophy cannot survive exposure. Once you see it clearly, it loses its power to operate unconsciously. From that point on, improvement is no longer about trying harder, but about thinking better, choosing differently, and allowing time to work in your favor. Ladies and gentlemen, most failure looks dramatic on the surface, but its real cause is usually quiet and ordinary. People tend to blame bad luck because it is emotionally convenient. Luck feels external, uncontrollable, and final. Mental models, on the other hand, are personal and adjustable, which makes them uncomfortable to examine. Yet if you study outcomes carefully, you will notice that what appears to be misfortune is often the predictable result of the same flawed thinking applied. Day after day. Mental models are the invisible frameworks through which people interpret reality. They influence how risk is judged, how effort is valued, how time is understood, and how decisions are made under pressure. When these models are weak, outdated, or inaccurate, even intelligent people make consistently poor choices. The danger is not ignorance, but confidence in the wrong ideas. A person can be hardworking and sincere and still fail repeatedly if their thinking framework is faulty. Consider how often people confuse motion with progress. Staying busy feels productive, so the mental model becomes activity equals advancement. This leads to long hours, constant effort, and very little improvement. Another common model is short-term reward dominance, where immediate comfort or pleasure is valued more than long-term benefit. This model does not cause visible damage in a day or a week, but over years it quietly erodes health, skill, finances, and reputation. None of this feels like bad decision-making in the moment. It simply feels normal. Repetition is what makes these models dangerous. A single poor decision rarely ruins a life, but the same small error in thinking, applied daily, compounds just as powerfully as a good habit. Poor mental models accumulate interest in the wrong direction. They shape routines, reactions, and expectations until failure becomes almost inevitable. At that point, luck is blamed because the true cause is buried under years of unexamined assumptions. Bad mental models also distort how feedback is interpreted. When results are poor, instead of adjusting the model, people often double down. They work harder, push longer, or become more emotional, all while using the same flawed framework. This creates exhaustion without progress. The mind protects its familiar beliefs because abandoning them feels like admitting past mistakes, and the ego resists that admission strongly. The solution is not brilliance or sudden insight. It is systematic correction. Better outcomes require better lenses. This means deliberately questioning assumptions that feel obvious. It means studying cause and effect, not stories and excuses. It means borrowing proven models from disciplines that actually work, such as economics, psychology, and basic probability, instead of relying on intuition alone. When mental models improve, behavior improves automatically. Decisions become calmer, patience increases, and fewer obvious errors are made. Progress may still be slow, but it becomes reliable. Over time, what once looked like luck begins to look like consistency. What once felt unfair begins to make sense. Failure stops repeating because the thinking that produced it has finally been replaced. Ladies and gentlemen, most people approach self-improvement the wrong way. They try to add more information, more techniques, more motivation, and more goals on top of an already cluttered mind. They assume progress comes from accumulation. In reality, progress usually begins with subtraction. Before you can think clearly, you have to remove the ideas that distort your judgment. A mind filled with foolish beliefs cannot use smart ones effectively, no matter how many are added. Foolish beliefs are not always obvious or extreme. They are often polite, familiar, and socially accepted. Ideas like believing effort must always feel rewarding, or that confidence should come before action, or that being busy is the same as being effective. These beliefs do not sound dangerous, which is why they survive for so long. They quietly guide decisions, shape habits, and influence reactions without being challenged. Adding smarter ideas on top of them is like installing new software on a corrupted system. The system keeps crashing, and the user BLA the upgrade instead of the underlying problem. Subtraction requires humility. It means accepting that some of the ideas you have trusted are wrong or incomplete. This is uncomfortable because beliefs become tied to identity over time. Letting go of them can feel like losing a part of yourself. But refusing to let go is far more costly. It keeps you loyal to patterns that no longer serve you. Growth demands the ability to say, "This worked once, but it no longer works," and then move on without resentment. Many foolish beliefs survive because they reduce emotional discomfort. Believing that failure is caused by external forces protects the ego. Believing that success should be fast protects patience. Believing that talent matters more than consistency protects laziness. These beliefs are emotionally soothing but strategically disastrous. They make life feel easier in the short term while quietly sabotaging long-term results. Reprogramming begins the moment you identify these beliefs and remove them deliberately. This does not require replacing them immediately with perfect alternatives. Simply removing a false assumption often improves decision-making on its own. When you stop believing that discomfort is a sign of danger, you become willing to practice longer. When you stop believing that clarity must come before action, you begin learning through movement. When you stop believing that effort entitles you to results, you focus on effectiveness instead of exhaustion. Subtraction creates mental space. In that space, better ideas have room to function. Rational principles such as patience, delayed gratification, and probabilistic thinking only work when they are not competing with emotional shortcuts. A clean mental environment allows cause and effect to become visible again. Decisions feel calmer, reactions slow down, you start avoiding obvious mistakes instead, chasing clever tricks. True improvement is rarely dramatic. It is quiet, corrective, and cumulative. Removing foolish beliefs does not feel heroic, but it prevents years of wasted effort. Once the unnecessary ideas are gone, the useful ones stick naturally, and progress stops feeling forced and starts feeling inevitable. Ladies and gentlemen, people often underestimate the power of small corrections because they are obsessed with visible change. They want dramatic breakthroughs, complete transformations, and immediate results. Small adjustments in thinking feel insignificant by comparison. They do not create excitement, and they rarely produce instant feedback. Yet over time, these minor shifts quietly outperform bold but inconsistent efforts. The real advantage in life does not come from intensity, but from direction. A small correction in thinking might look like choosing accuracy over speed, or long-term benefit over short-term relief. It might be the decision to pause before reacting, or to gather a little more information before committing. In isolation, these choices seem trivial. On a single day, they barely register. But life is not lived in single days. It is lived in thousands of repeated moments, and each moment reinforces the direction you are moving in. Compounding works whether you pay attention to it or not. When thinking improves slightly, decision quality improves slightly. Better decisions create better outcomes, which provide better feedback, which further refines thinking. This loop strengthens with time. The reverse is also true. Small errors in judgment repeated daily accumulate into frustration, instability, and regret. The difference between success and stagnation is rarely a single dramatic moment. It is the quiet accumulation of hundreds of small choices made with slightly better reasoning. One of the most valuable corrections is learning to avoid obvious mistakes. People often chase clever strategies while ignoring simple errors that drain progress. Overreacting emotionally, acting without understanding incentives, or confusing effort with effectiveness are not dramatic failures, but they are costly. Eliminating just one of these errors can improve results across multiple areas of life simultaneously. This is why small mental corrections can feel disproportionately powerful over time. Time acts as an amplifier. Early on, progress from better thinking may feel slow, even disappointing. There is often a gap between improved decisions and visible results. This is where many people abandon the process. They mistake the absence of immediate reward for the absence of progress. Those who understand compounding remain patient. They continue making slightly better choices, trusting that time will eventually reveal the difference. As years pass, the advantage becomes unmistakable. Relationships stabilize because reactions are measured. Finances improve because decisions are less impulsive. Skills deepen because practice is consistent rather than sporadic. What once required discipline begins to feel natural. Others may attribute this stability to luck or talent, but the foundation was laid long before through small, uncelebrated corrections in thinking. Life rewards those who align their reasoning with reality and then allow time to do its work. The benefits may arrive slowly, but they arrive reliably, and once they do, they tend to stay. Ladies and gentlemen, people are naturally drawn to emotional brilliance. It is exciting, dramatic, and easy to admire. Sudden bursts of motivation, bold decisions made with confidence, and moments of inspired action feel powerful. They create stories that sound impressive when told. But life is not shaped by moments that feel heroic. It is shaped by behavior that is repeated quietly and reliably. This is where consistent, rational behavior proves its superiority. Emotional brilliance depends heavily on mood, energy, and circumstances. When conditions are favorable, it can produce impressive short-term results. When they are not, it disappears. Rational behavior, by contrast, is designed to function even when motivation is low and emotions are unstable. It does not require excitement. It only requires clarity and repetition. Because of this, it survives bad days, boring periods, and external pressure far better than inspiration ever could. Consistency creates trust with reality. When actions are guided by reason rather than impulse, results become more predictable. Predictability allows planning. Planning allows progress. Emotional decision-making often feels right in the moment but ignores probabilities, incentives, and long-term consequences. Rational behavior may feel less satisfying initially, but it steadily reduces error. Avoiding big mistakes matters more than making occasional brilliant moves, and rationality excels at error prevention. Another advantage of rational consistency is its compounding effect. Each sensible action slightly improves position, understanding, or stability. Over time, these small improvements reinforce one another. Emotional brilliance, on the other hand, often creates volatility. High peaks are followed by deep drops. Progress surges, then stalls. Energy is spent recovering instead of advancing. What looks impressive in short bursts often produces mediocre outcomes over a lifetime. Rational behavior also reduces decision fatigue. When principles guide action, fewer choices require emotional negotiation. You act according to what works, not what feels good. This conserves mental energy and improves endurance. People who rely on emotion must constantly reignite their drive. People who rely on simply continue. Over years, this difference becomes enormous. The world tends to reward those who are dependable rather than dramatic. Relationships strengthen when reactions are stable. Careers advance when output is reliable. Finances grow when risk is measured. None of these rewards require brilliance. They require showing up, thinking clearly, and avoiding self-sabotage. Emotional brilliance may win attention, but rational consistency wins outcomes. In the long run, steady behavior aligned with reality quietly outperforms passion-driven action. It may never look impressive in a single moment, but across a lifetime it builds results that emotion alone cannot sustain.